It's my great pleasure to introduce Sheila Lord from BMR Healthcare. Now, BMR Healthcare and Thrive have been partner for just a year, 2 years now. I think we've been working together, particularly on some of the menopause training, but also we both focus very much on the mental health first aid training as well. And recently we've just got together around neurodiversity in the workplace. So we're looking forward for that. But Sheila and the team are experts in menopause in the workplace, and we are seeing so many organizations asking for that now, and putting it firmly in to that EDI culture that an organization wants. Sheila, it's an absolute pleasure for you to be here today. Thank you so much for taking time out, and I know you've got hard stops, so because you're delivering training this afternoon, so we'll get through this, and hopefully there'll be lots of questions coming through. If you want to focus on the chat, you can, but I'll be doing that on your behalf. So if there's I won't answer any questions because I'm not that important, but I will collate them all and we'll ask them all at the end. So if you would like to take it away, Sheila.
Marvellous. Thank you, Simon. Thanks for the introduction. As Simon said, Sheila from BMR Health and Wellbeing, and I'm just going to quickly share my screen because I've got a little slide deck. Just so you're not just staring at my ugly mug all the way through. So yeah, we're looking about embracing menopause and why we really need to be supporting women in the workplace. And one of the things I do want to say as we get started is that when it comes to menopause, experience is very unique, okay? Our experiences through menopause would be genetic, based on our hormones, based on our different physiological makeup, our ethnicity, etc., genetics. So all of that will have a part to play, and no two menopause experiences will be the same. Some women may sail through it, others may have occasional symptoms, and others may have quite severe symptoms. So we'll talk about that as we go through. In regards to this, you don't have to opt into any type of conversation. You can opt out at any time, and you can leave at any time. And I just want to say that today's session is not clinical advice. It is for just general educational content only. Regardless of what you take away from this session, I would always encourage you to speak to a menopause professional, a GP, a specialist menopause support clinic, when looking for medical help, support and advice, okay? So as Simon said, this is a better picture of me pre-menopause. Menopause has taken its toll. I'm the founder of BMR Health and Wellbeing. I previously worked as a senior operations director in the electronics industry. And as Simon said, we partner with Thrive on the mental health first aid stuff, the neurodiversity, and also on menopause. And interestingly, that's the kind of pre-menopause picture, or pre-perimenopause picture. Moving on to this one, this is pretty much menopause for me, okay? Very grumpy person, okay? Now, I was a late parent, okay? So I became a mum at the age of 40. I then started to, and I had a busy career, I was in my corporate job, and very quickly after having the different hormone experiences that come with parenting, just 6 or 7 years after that, I started to experience perimenopause. And that presented itself to me in the form of anxiety, depression, brain fog, not being able to cope, not feeling like I was good enough. And at that time, and it's only with hindsight and it's only with the knowledge that I've garnered since leaving my corporate life, which was, looking back now, a result of unrecognized perimenopause. It's only kind of thanks to my perimenopause that I'm doing what I'm doing today. But what that means in terms of addressing menopause in the workplace is that people like myself are getting to the heights of their careers, okay, mid-40s, early 50s, and then we're slamming into menopause. More so these days, we've got more awareness around it, but we're hitting menopause and women are leaving their businesses. Women are leaving their jobs in the droves because what used to be manageable has become untenable. It certainly did for me, okay? But the good stuff is, and one of the things we're going to talk about is that menopause doesn't need to be game over, okay? So we're going to look at why we do need to talk about menopause at work, and hopefully some of what I've just said there gives us an indication around that, and look at these kind of different stages, the facts about menopause, Also looking at the business case, and there's different stages, as I've said, and again, touching again on menopause and weight gain. We haven't got a massive amount of time today. So we really need to, this really will be a bit of a light touch in all areas. So we'll go all the way through that, hopefully get to touch on having a conversation about menopause and also the men in menopause, okay, and signposting and support. So I'd love for you to just pop answers in the chat, but really want to understand what words come to mind for you when you hear menopause. It'd just be great if we could see some of that just dropping in the chat. Oftentimes when we hear the word menopause, we're thinking some of the feedback we've had in the past would be, oh, I feel old. I can see it coming up here. Yeah, anxiety, hot flushes, stress, no more periods. That's always a positive. And again, hot flushes, anxiety, brain fog, memory fog, middle-aged, etc., sadness, depression, lack of control in life. All of these things absolutely are the things that can come to mind when we're hearing about menopause. But like I said before, it doesn't mean that menopause is game over. It can feel like that, but it doesn't have to be that way, okay? So we can still look better, feel better, not better, just notice that, brain fog, have more energy, okay, and we can take back control of our health and fitness. What we need to do is to understand what's going on with our bodies and understand some of these challenges that our kind of brain and our thoughts and feelings are throwing at us, so that we can understand how to create better habits and how to make better choices, okay? Now, we really do need to be talking about this in the workplace, okay? Now, there's a demographic case for this, as I touched on before. Many women in work, similar to myself, that are leaving careers that organisations have spent years investing into training and developing career paths for women like myself and like a lot of you probably on the call, where we're just leaving the business. That demographic is that at that senior exec level, if you're trying to meet equality, diversity and inclusion numbers, especially at senior board levels, you're going to struggle to do that if we're not addressing the menopause conversation. Okay, there's a clear business case why we need to address that. And again, I'll come on to that. We have legal responsibilities and it's the right thing to do. And more recently, literally just within the last couple of weeks, BSI, we've been in discussion with BSI and a number of other companies that are working in this menopause space. BSI have actually developed a stand to give employers guidance on menstrual and menopausal health in the workplace. So I just want to quickly ask again in the chat, what do you think is the typical age for menopause? Okay, so just be interesting to get some of your feedback as to what we believe that is. So if you can pop some answers in the chat, that would be great. So 50, 45 to 55, 50s, 47, 52. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So some great responses there. Typically, the menopause age in the UK is around the age of 51, but it usually starts to happen anywhere between the age of 45 and 55. And it can be any time between the 60s and it can be earlier. Okay, I personally started experiencing symptoms at the age of 47. Went to my GP, who promptly told me I was too young and wrote me a prescription for antidepressants, which promptly went in the bin because I knew I wasn't depressed. I just knew I wasn't feeling right. Okay, and that's not an uncommon story. Yeah. But you know, as I said before, experiencing these symptoms at the age 47, I couldn't cope with the easy stuff anymore. The day-to-day stuff just really overwhelmed me. I quit my job, thought I was rubbish, I thought I was burnt out, thought I'd lost the plot. And so it's really vital that, as you're all here today, we're educating ourselves in this area, because when we look at the demographics, they're really quite high. 1 in 4 women are experiencing serious menopause symptoms, okay? And 8 in 10 women of menopausal age are in work. So a lot of women in society going through the menopause are actually in gainful employment. And 1 in 100 women are reaching menopause before the age of 40. Now, again, I don't know about you on the call, but I certainly thought of menopause when I was in my 20s and my 30s. and even at the start of my 40s, that it was for old people. Yeah, it was for my mum, it was for my grandma, it wasn't for me, it was never going to bother me. And needing to claim your pension, you always think it's miles and miles away, but actually forewarned is forearmed in this area. Okay, so knowing what's coming at this different life stage is really important. And the majority of women in work, and I would put myself in that bracket, I would not be comfortable back in 2017 when I first left my job. And if I'd have been, even if at that point I'd have been aware that I was going through perimenopause, I would not have been comfortable disclosing to my own male manager the fact that I was experiencing menopause related health issues and brain fog issues. We really do need to create this open and inclusive workspace that we can have those conversations with our male colleagues. We don't want to be stuck behind the stigma of having these conversations, and we need to be able to have these conversations with our male colleagues, and equally our male colleagues need to be able to have open conversations with us as they start to spot signs and symptoms. In the way that we talk about having open conversations around mental health, we do need to do the same around menopause. I'm sorry, I just have to kick my dog because he's snoring very loudly. So what I wanted to do was to just touch on the business case. So not dissimilar to mental health, and we know I'm not by any means saying that menopause is a mental health issue. It's absolutely not. But if we're not addressing it in the workplace and creating inclusive workplaces, it can have similar impacts in work in terms of job performance, in terms of being there but not quite being there, in terms of this amount of brain fog that we've got. Turnover, as I've said before, we might be leaving the business. And generally, and this was a massive one for me, I spent probably 18 months to 2 years totally disengaged from my job, totally disconnected from my job. Maintaining job performance when you can't think, when you can't remember, when you're dropping the ball on things, this is going to have a massive impact on businesses and organizations. And again, when we're hitting that midlife, this life stage, we've often potentially not just got work going on and menopause, but we could have young children to deal with, like myself. I was a late mum. There could be lots and lots of other things going on in our life at this stage. So it's really important that businesses are creating spaces that are inclusive, that recognise this, and that teach both male and female colleagues how to have open conversations and how to be aware and how to spot signs and symptoms around menopause. Now, we talk about menopause in the workplace. There is also for businesses a legal case here around needing to put support in place. Okay, now when we look at case law, there's again, there's one for you to Google here, but there was an employment tribunal decision in Merchant versus BT that found in favour of the person bringing the tribunal against BT. And tribunal claims are on the increase when it comes to this, and these generally are processed under the Equality Act 2010. That tends to be the case law that this goes under. And it's not, but menopause is not an expressly protected characteristic, menopause or menstruation, but the legal protection when it comes to the Equality Act is likely to be around protection from discrimination, either related to sex or age, okay? And the Health and Safety at Work Act states that it is the duty of every employer to look after the health, safety and welfare of all employees. And then the work regulations say that the way in which we do that is we need to assess the risk factors that can have an impact on health, and menopause and the symptoms of menopause can be brought into that in the same way that things like mental health, etc., fall under the health element of the Health and Safety at Work Act. Okay. Now, within menopause, we talk a lot in terms of the phrasing of menopause, and we do tend to talk about it in the context of menopause all the time, but a lot of the time, what we're actually talking about is perimenopause. So perimenopause is the time leading up to menopause. This is the time where you know, several years before actual menopause occurs, we start to experience these physiological changes, which are triggered by the levels of estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone that are reducing in our bodies. Now, menopause is actually a one-day only event, and this one-day only event occurs on the 12 months after the day of your last period. As soon as you hit, it's been 12 months since my last period, you are said to be in menopause. The day after, you're in post-menopause, okay? And again, in post-menopause, you can still experience symptoms. And menopause can be brought on medically. So things like hysterectomies, things like cancer treatments can actually bring on early medical menopause, okay? But I just wanted to make that distinction clear that a lot of the time when we're talking about, I've got the menopause, I've got the hot flashes, I've got the brain fog and the anxiety, we're actually talking about that perimenopause stage, okay? So I just, again, in the chat, can you pop down what are some of the main symptoms that we would experience during menopause? Again, just be good to see, yeah, just not really like hot flashes, not being able to sleep, yeah, tiredness, anxiety, depression, concentration, yeah, personality changes. That's my husband. I was a completely different person until I hit my HRT phase. So yeah, brain fog, reduced concentration, mood swings. Yeah, a lot of what you've put up there are some of the top symptoms that we would see in menopause, that brain fog. And this is brain fog beyond going into the room and looking at forgetting what you've walked in that room for. This brain fog can sometimes have us feeling like days we're just walking through treacle. And as somebody else has put on there, the fatigue, the insomnia, the difficulty sleeping, hot flushes, anxiety, mood changes, all of these are symptoms of menopause, and these can have a devastating effect on us both personally and professionally. If our job includes a lot of attention to detail and we're just not doing that, we're dropping the ball on stuff, that can have a massive impact. That then affects our self-esteem, and we get stuck in this never-ending loop, which can have the potential to bring us further and further down. But it's not all depressing. We can manage symptoms. We need to be able to recognize them and when they're happening in ourselves, and then we need to be able to look at the different ways in which we can manage them. Now, in terms of managing our symptoms, there are lots of things that we can do, and I would suggest that the biggest thing that you can do is look at lifestyle, okay? My menopause, when it kicked in, I wasn't sure of what was happening. Also coincided with COVID. So I'd gone from being healthy, running, cycling, climbing mountains, to basically lockdown. I hadn't been drinking for 15 months before I started menopause. COVID happened. I was drinking wine. I was eating junk food. The sun was shining. Everybody was off work. My lifestyle changes went from being where they needed to being completely dreadful, which exacerbated my menopause symptoms. The drinking of alcohol made my sleep poorer. The change in my diet gave me inflammation in the body. When we're looking at lifestyle, we need to be looking at a good anti-inflammatory diet, which is basically eating lots of green stuff, okay? Broccoli, spinach, your cabbages, lots and lots of leafy greens, yeah? And always work on less processed food, add less red meat. Work on the basis if you can catch it or grow it, you can eat it. But we need to be taking a lot of the kind of processed food out of our diet. If we're doing that, if we're focused on our nutrition, if we're reducing our alcohol intake, that will have a massive impact on our sleep. When we get a good night's sleep, we've got a better mood and we've got more focus. So I would always suggest that we're looking at using sleep trackers. We're looking at food tracking. What gets measured gets managed. So if you track it, track your mood, track what you're doing when your mood is up, track what you're doing when your mood is down, then you will be able to understand what works for you and what doesn't. And it's difficult when we get to this stage. we lose our mojo, our motivation goes, and we've got to try and find ways in which to punch through it. So again, in the workplace, having a community, having menopause cafes, work support groups, whatever that may be, where we can get together, have a bit of a good old whinge, have a look and a chat around what's working for people. Creating that sense of community can have a massive impact, okay? And again, exercise, we need to be looking at strength training. We need to keep those joints moving. Walking, not necessarily running, but walking, yoga, Pilates, all really good things to keep you moving. I stupidly fell off my bike at the beginning of lockdown, and that kicked off for me osteoarthritis. And the fact that I was doing all the wrong things from a lifestyle perspective now means 3 years down the line, I need a hip replacement because I'm now struggling with severe osteoarthritis because of inflammation in my body, because of the lack of the mismatch in hormones in my body, the fact that it took me 3 years to reach out and get HRT for myself. So really important that we focus on our diet, we focus on our exercise, and we focus on our alcohol input. And like I say, track it, Fitbits, Apple Watches, MyFitnessPal. What gets measured gets managed, okay? If we want, we can also look at medical support. So again, in terms of HRT is designed to put these hormone levels back to where they should be so that we're putting us back in balance. There has been a lot of bad press of HRT over the years. Speak to your doctor. The estrogen helps to mitigate the hot flashes, the mood swings. We've got the progesterone in there and the testosterone. Now, typically what you'll find on prescription from the NHS is estrogen and progesterone. Not as readily available is testosterone, and some people find that they've got a big deficiency in that. You need to speak to your GP, okay? And then there are also different kind of complementary approaches. So things like looking at probiotics, getting that gut health right, reducing inflammation in your body, black cohosh, different products that can help, different complementary products that can help. And then things like mindfulness, meditation, yoga. A lot of these things already take place in work. If you've got these things available to you and you're struggling with menopause symptoms, then maybe that's something that you can take advantage of in the workplace. But when we're looking at the work environment, again, what environment are you working in? Are we in an office like this one here, where it's small cubicles, no natural lighting, poor ventilation, all crowded, no access to a quiet or restful space? Or do you have a lovely, bright, airy office with windows and lovely air conditioning? What is that environment that we've got? And as an employer, or as an employee talking to your employer, we can ask for reasonable adjustments to be made to make our life more comfortable in the workplace. So it might be within the environment, it could be lighting, it could be desk fans, it could be neck fans. It doesn't mean because you're having hot flashes, we freeze everybody to death by putting the aircon on Defcon 5, but it might be that our employer provides us with neck fans or desk fans, okay? So we can look at the environment and things like if we've got dress codes or we've got uniforms, are they made of a material that's a breathable fabric? Do they fit well for women? Are they designed to fit a men's body shape better than women? So we can have a look at things like that. With work and work design, we can look at the flexibility there. If an employee, if a member of the team is not sleeping well at night, they've got insomnia, let's have a look at maybe reviewing start and finish times. Can we take that into account? Can we have some informal arrangements or some flexible working? If people are struggling with brain fog, I've come up with different mechanisms now of making sure I don't drop the ball. So it'll be a task manager. For me, it's managing my sent items, not deleting anything until I know it's been dealt with. So I've got a checklist I can go back to. What can we do in terms of tools and systems to help people remember tasks if they're dropping the ball? What can we do around increasing breaks in the workplace, etc.? And again, from a facilities perspective, do we have a shower? Do we have grab bags in the workplace? It may be that some of our female colleagues are struggling with flooding, heavy bleeding. Do we have shower facilities? Is there an option there to have a grab bag with free sanitary products even that are provided? So we've got access to these facilities. And then do we have a culture that lives and breathes this inclusivity, not a written policy stuck on the wall that is just written and not followed through. We need to show that we're actually living and breathing this. And again, if we've got senior leaders in the business that are happy to stand up and share their experience, then that often has a big impact in helping to reduce stigma and saying, actually, it's okay for me to put myself out there and say, actually, I need some help. So actually, what access have you got to support there? Like I said, building a community around this, people supporting colleagues supporting each other. Absolutely. There's been some incredible results with that type of stuff. Regular one-to-one discussions with your managers. And again, access to things like talking it through on EAP and counselling services. We don't need to wait until we're experiencing significant challenges. If we feel that we're going through this already, let's get proactive in terms of reaching out and getting that support in place, okay? And as I said before, we need to be very open and non-judgmental with this. So you may have I don't know, I might be going through my menopause and I'm sailed through it and I'm like, yeah, this menopause, I'm 52, didn't bother me. I don't know what such and such's problem is. We can't judge everybody by our own experience because everybody's experience is different, okay? Some women may not notice any major changes at all. Yet 3 out of 4 women experience symptoms and 1 in 4 are serious. And this can last for anywhere between 4 and 8 years. So it's not an overnight thing, but know that we can manage these symptoms. They don't have to be really bad. They don't have to be unbearable before we're reaching out for help. It's good to understand what these signs are. Changes in behaviour, somebody dropping the ball, work performance isn't as good, they seem disengaged, they're not with it, they seem disinterested. Let's have a conversation. Hi, I'm noticing some changes. Is there anything that's going on in terms of what I can do in terms of supporting you? So there's lots that we can do in the workplace. And there is, and I can make this available to you if you express an interest in this in the chat with Simon, there is, as I said before, this new BS standard, BS 43016 that's come out. And this is just a diagram here, a very simple thing, and what we can do to create a really inclusive environment in the workplace. If we're taking this inclusive approach, let's have this policy guidance. Okay, we've got a policy on menopause, but is it really clear how you're supporting menopause? What do you have in place? Who's responsible for the policy? Are the policies accessible? Are they understood by employees? Are they followed? Or is it just a written piece of paper that sits on a wall in a pretty frame? What is that policy guidance? Who's had input into that? Have we just written the policy, or did we include employees that are going through this to get their support and guidance on it? Have we got a supportive workplace culture? Are senior leadership involved? Are we sharing information top down and bottom up, stories and experiences? Okay, diary dates, events, promoting the subject matter. As I say, the menopause cafes, the communities, etc. And getting this training in for everybody. You're on this webinar today. Have we created any training for menopause champions in the workplace? So like many places today, I have workplace mental health being champions. What have you got in terms of menopause? So it's often a good idea to some of those wellbeing ambassadors in the organisation to give them also the menopause training and things like accessible webinars that all people in the business can access on a regular basis, okay? And as I said before, we've got these physical aspects of work, so the work environment, the fans, the temperature, etc., and then making these adjustments to the role. But then again, if we're going to be doing all of these types of things, then what we really need to be doing is making sure that we're able to evaluate what's going on and have some metrics in place to measure the impact and the effectiveness of what we're getting on what it is that we're doing. Because again, I'll always go back to what gets measured, gets managed. How many conversations are we having around menopause? Are we logging those conversations? Not going, Joan from accounts came to speak to me about her menopause experience, but I've had a conversation with 5 people this month, all been around menopause, and all of them saying that the temperature is not good, and all of them asking for fans or different flexible working. We need to be able to evaluate how many people are talking to us, what those kind of recurring themes are, and then what we can do to address that. So we're putting that in place and evaluating on an ongoing basis. So I was going to pretty much stop there. What I wanted to say was, if you're interested in menopause champion training, we do offer champion training. If you're on this webinar today, it's CPD accredited training. So very much for individuals to come on in very much the similar way that you would with mental health first aiders. And if you use the Thrive10 discount code again in the follow-up from today's webinar, Simon can send you links on how to have a look at that, see what's involved in the training. But it's a 2.5-hour CPD accredited instructor-led training. And really, I did that training. I got onto the conversation with my doctor. I got my HRT. I got myself sorted out. My husband will thank me for it all day long, because it changed me from the complete nightmare I was to live with to actually getting a little bit back to my old self. Okay, so I'm going to pause it there and just move on really to questions, if anybody has any.
So that is amazing, Sheila. I don't even know where to start. I'll dive into it in a minute, but we do have one question that's come through. It's from, I won't say it was from actually, that's just in case that person doesn't want to know, but I have a colleague who is of menopausal age, but does not feel comfortable having a policy in place to raise awareness as she feels targeted. We have other women who are getting close to the age of getting it, and I would like to have something in place. How would you deal with this? Amazing question.
Yeah, I think what you've got to do on this one and take into account, obviously, this woman does feel vulnerable, does feel targeted, okay? And in a similar way as we would do with the mental health stuff, we need to get this so it's company-wide, it's organisationally wide. Yeah, we can't just look to target this one person, but have those reassuring conversations that, look, this is something that we want to do organisationally, to make sure that as people are coming through this, and actually maybe even try and bring that person on board in so much as, would you want to help us to develop this policy? What would be helpful for you? And again, like I said before, often people aren't comfortable in disclosing. So if we can encourage those people that are not comfortable in disclosing in becoming part of this journey and helping to influence change, that could be another approach that you could take. It can be a difficult conversation.
And BMR Health and Wellbeing, do you help out with those policies? Is that something that you can do with?
Yeah, no, we can help with those policies. Again, help creating communities and getting little groups set up so that it can become this supportive community within the organisation.
I think it's really important what you said there as well, is to get the person involved. And I think that's an amazing way of getting that engagement in as well. The questions are coming through quite fast now, as I expected they would. So someone's asked if the slides are available. We tend not to send around the slides because obviously they're, for the most part, they're BMR Health and Wellbeing's intellectual property. But also this webinar after is available in about 2 days' time, when all the post-processing and editing, it is available for you to watch time and time again. So yeah, we don't send around the slides, but you can watch this webinar as if there's things that you thought are missed, especially if you're going through the brain fog. And I'm clearly not perimenopausal in any way. I just suffer massive short-term memory loss due to my neurodiversity, and I'm going to be watching this again because even though I'm part of it, there's loads of stuff that I missed there. So it's just amazing, Sheila. The next question that we've got is, how do we know if the symptoms are menopausal and not something else, i.e. side effects from meds?
Yeah, good question. Again, you'd need to speak to your GP. There are blood tests that can check our hormone levels, but they're not overly reliable. Very much depending on where you are in your cycle, you're supposed to do them on a certain date or time. So I would suggest talking it through with your GP. If you look at those top 5 symptoms of menopause, the hot flashes would tend to really be, but again, other medications can cause those hot flashes. Things like drinking excess alcohol can cause hot flashes when that's your body flushing that out. So it's a case of process of elimination. Put things in, take things out, put things in, take things out. And I thought, I don't really struggle with hot flashes, as for example, as menopause, but I was waking up every night at 3 o'clock in the morning, absolutely drenched. I stopped drinking alcohol, that went away. It was literally wine sweat. wine sweating out of my body at 3 o'clock in the morning. I stopped drinking, that stopped. So what I thought was hot flashes was actually my body detoxing. So I think you've got to go on this process of elimination. And as I say, blood tests maybe can be indicative, but not wholly reliable when it comes to menopause. I hope that helps.
That's wonderful. The next one we've got is also, not wonderful, you having wine sweats on the mod, but the answer was brilliant.
No, they stopped.
Also, if menopause is exactly 12 months, and that was totally new information to me after your last period, and if you get your period back, let's say 16 months later, are you considered perimenopausal again? And are you in a way back to the beginning of the journey?
Very difficult one to answer, and I would say I'm not actually sure. So I'm in a lot of kind of Facebook, and again, I go back to this sense of community, this Facebook communities where this exactly happens to women. And it could be, I would say that what you do need to do is to go back and see your GP, because it can be indicative of other stuff going on. So I think that if you've not had your period for 12 months and you've hit menopause, and then a few months later you start to have a bleed, then do go back to your GP to get properly checked out.
That's brilliant. I know we've only got a few minutes left. Someone said they love the idea of having a menstrual health and menopause policy. That's absolutely brilliant. Let's focus on one age group then, because you're bringing that whole, the menstruation element into it, which I think is brilliant. Someone said very informative, knew some of this, but they've learned so much information. Silence thing in the workplace, but quite obvious, a lot of people struggle silently. And then someone's asked, how would you recommend this is handled with male-dominated employees where females may not be happy to discuss?
We've got to get men talking about menopause. We really have. And again, having some of this community stuff as an example, get men on these courses, get men on these webinars, because behind most of those men, depending on the demographic, is going to be a menopausal wife or a sister or a friend. So men, just to ask my husband, are hugely impacted by women's experience of menopause. And with our menopause champion training, we had one course, bear in mind these are open courses that individuals from different companies book on. We had one course that was all men, literally all men. So men are having these conversations. Very difficult for men and then the women to break down that stigma. The only way we can break down the stigma is to normalize it by having those conversations. But educating the men, they can practice at home with their partners and having those conversations. And again, they might be struggling themselves as a result of a partner going through menopause, and bringing some of that into the workplace where they're arguing at home, they're not happy at home, doesn't know how to support his partner. So having them involved in this conversation is going to help them to help themselves and the people they are around.
We do have one more question, but it's a really quite a long one, and I think it would definitely generate some more conversation. So I'm wondering, Sheila, if you could take the question away and maybe we could do a LinkedIn post or something like that to answer the question. The question is, what can we do about managers who are not supportive? As this is still a subject considered, that a person will be labelled a poor performer and not given opportunities to promote or any development. This has been this person's example, and they feel as if they've been discriminated against, as opposed to my other colleagues who are given career progression. As I say, I know you've only got like a minute left on this, but that's such an important area, isn't it? Manager education. And I don't know whether that's worth us sort of doing a little LinkedIn post or something. Yeah,
that's a whole other webinar in itself, to be honest. But again, with managers not supportive, this is where you've got to have this senior leadership commitment, this top down, bottom up, so that we're getting all of this. And this goes back to, is it all managers? Is it just a specific manager? Where can you go beyond that manager? Because this is about not judging people by what your personal experience or thoughts are on the subject matter. So it is really difficult. And then again, having these strong policies in place if you're reaching this, because going back to what I said earlier about the legal case and the Equality Act, if a male colleague and a female colleague of a similar age are struggling with performance, is the male colleague going to be treated in a different way. And this has happened in case law, that they're giving support and, oh, we see you're going through a few challenges, Brian, let's help you out here. Whereas a female colleague would have been, it's women's things, it's the hormones, it's the menopause, and it could be treated very differently. So there needs to be equality and fairness there. So yeah, there's lots of facets to answering that.
Well,
yeah.
let's do a LinkedIn. Maybe we can do a LinkedIn live. I want to do one for them for ages. But also, I think let's get you back. Let's get you back in a couple of months, and we'll have that discussion. But thank you so much. And I know you've got to run to do some training. Thank you to everybody who's joined today, and obviously especially Sheila. Got more questions, but luckily, because I know you, I can ring them up and ask you. But for those of you that are not, please feel free to connect to Sheila and myself, obviously on LinkedIn. If you can follow BMR Health and Wellbeing on LinkedIn and Thrive, that would really help us. We answer to some social media people, and they tell us to get more people engaged. So please feel free to reach out to both myself and Sheila. And actually, having that lovely discount code is fantastic. So thank you. Again, you'll all be getting a follow-up email from this, including a link to the recording of the webinar to watch at your leisure. So please come back and join us on the 26th of July. We've got the wonderful Rachel Toseland, and she's going to be talking about the double rainbow, which is around LGBT plus and neurodiverse differences, the fact that maybe you have to come out twice, once when you're neurodiverse and once when you're gay. So please, again, come back and join us on the 26th of July. Sheila, thank you once again for your time, and good luck on the training.
Thank you. You're welcome. Bye.